Hey, what's up YouTube family? Hope y'all having a good one. In today's video, I'm going to go over 5 study tips for you to ace the Naplex. Stay tuned. So my first study tip for acing the Naplex is to have a good resource. A good resource is a resource that thoroughly covers the material that you'll need that will be covered on the exam. And so good resource would be like the RX Prep book. There's a Sutton Naplex review book that's also contemporary, and it has the most recent relevant information that you'll need to be up to date on the material that will be asked of you on the Naplex. I would say even maybe an RX Prep book from 2019 might still be relevant. You can probably still get away with using that book as a resource if you don't want to purchase the 2020 book. Not a lot has changed, but there has been a few updates, specifically in terms of like TB dosing and how latent TB and TB is treated. Those guidelines have been adjusted. There've also been some adjustment in other guidelines, such as the asthma guidelines, like the GINA guidelines. There've been some adjustment made in those. But for the most part, most guidelines have remained the same from 2019. So you can probably still get away with using an older book. But I want to go past 2019. Okay, so make sure that you have a good resource that you're using to study for the exam. So my second study tip for you guys when studying for the Naplex is to study multiple chapters at the same time. Why is this a good idea? Most people, the way that they like to study is they like to study in a linear fashion. I'm going to cover this topic first, and I'm going to cover this topic, and then this topic. But really, you don't want to do that because remember, healthcare is a holistic subject. All these topics are really tied together. So you don't want to treat things as isolated. You don't want to isolate topics. And also, there are over 55 different topics on this exam. Well, if you start off with just topic 1 and say, I'm going to study in a linear fashion, do topic 1, then topic 2. By the time you get to topic 55, you might have completely forgotten what you studied in topic 1, right? So when you study multiple chapters at the same time, it allows you to stay current on all the different topics, and it also allows you to compare and contrast. You're able to compare and contrast similar concepts that are covered throughout the different chapters. For example, like dose conversion. If you study loop diuretics, dose conversions, you'll memorize those dose conversions, and then you'll move on, and then you might move on to another chapter about steroids, and then you'll have to study the steroid dose conversions. And if you don't go back and review the loop diuretic conversions, it's going to be very easy for you to mix those conversion factors up. But if you're studying those 2 chapters at the same time, you can compare the dose conversion factors for loop diuretics to the dose conversion factors for steroids. And what that allows you to do is it allows you to better differentiate between those 2 conversion factors. You won't get those mixed up when you take the exam. So you want to study multiple chapters at the same time and compare and contrast them. You want to study in the same way that the exam is going to be given to you. The exam is going to be given to you randomly, so you want to study chapters randomly as well. So that's tip number 2. My third tip for you guys to help you really ace this exam is when you study a chapter, don't immediately dive into the chapter. Go to the question bank for that chapter. So whether if it's an online question bank or if it's the questions at the end of the chapter, go and take a look at the questions at the end of the chapter before reading the chapter and try to answer those questions. Because what this would allow you to do is it will allow you to get a good baseline assessment of how well you understand that subject already before even reading the chapter, because you might find out when you get to the end of the chapter, you already know how to answer all those questions. And if you already know how to answer all those questions, you might not want to spend a lot of time on that chapter because you're pretty competent in that area already. And another reason why you should answer questions before reading the chapter is when you read the chapter, you know what to focus on because you know what types of questions you need to be able to answer at the end of the chapter. So once you know what kind of questions you need to be able to answer at the end of the chapter, when you read the chapter, you're better able to focus on the relevant material that you'll need to memorize and understand to be able to have a good understanding of the chapter. So answering questions first gives you an assessment of how good you are in that area, and it also tells you what to focus on when you read the chapter. So that's a good reason for you guys to answer questions before reading the chapters. Okay? All right, study tip number 4. So study tip number 4 is to create flashcards. especially for areas where there's a lot of memorization. You want to create flashcards, especially for like infectious disease subject, right? Infectious disease is all about being able to match the right drug with the right bug. You want to know the spectrum of every antibiotic, of all your penicillins, of all your cephalosporin, of all your aminoglycosides, all your carbapenems. You want to know what type of bacteria do these drugs cover. There's so many drugs in infectious disease, and there's so many different bacteria that the best way for you to go about learning that is to create flashcards. So you want to create a flashcard for all the drugs and all the bugs and match them together. And then what you do is you want to shuffle your flashcard. Once again, you don't want to learn in a sequential manner. You want to randomize the way that you learn, because that's the way that the questions are going to be given to you. When you randomize your studying habits, what it does is it forces you to truly learn the material. Because if you rely on a linear step 1, step 2, step 3 manner to learn, you're going to get in trouble, because the exam is going to shuffle the questions. You don't have to create flashcards for every area, but for those disease states that have a lot of drugs with names that are very hard to remember, you want to go old school and create flashcards, okay? When you write things down, you retain it better. There's something about writing something down that helps your long-term memory. All right, now tip number 5. So tip number 5 for studying for the Naplex is to only study when you're in the mood. Only study when you have the ability to focus on what you're studying. All right, if you're just going to flip pages passively, put the book down. Don't even study if you're in that frame of mind. If you study passively, then yeah, you could be reading the pages, you could be reading the book, but the information is just going through one ear and out the other, because you're not focused and you're not in the mood to actually focus and actually retain the information that you're reading. So how do you get focused? Well, a big part of getting focused is understanding yourself. Are you a morning person? So if you're a morning person, then what you want to do is you want to set up time in the morning to study, because if you're more of a morning person, if that's the time of day where you have a lot of energy and you have a lot of focus at that time, then you want to reserve time in the morning for you to study. Me, I'm more of a night person. I like to sleep in the morning. I tend to reserve the evening and the nighttime for studying, because that's when I'm relaxed and the most focused to study. Now, let's say you say, hey man, I'm never in the mood to study. What should I do? Well, you need to create the mood. Think of this as a motivating factor. It's like $500 for this exam. If you don't pass it, you got to pay that again. That should be enough motivation for you. I know it's definitely enough motivation for me. I definitely don't want to spend any more money taking this exam than I've already spent. It's expensive enough. Maybe being in a quiet area might be a good thing for you to do to be able to focus on studying. So a lot of places right now where people like to go to focus and study are closed. So you're gonna have to find a way to create a nice quiet environment in your home, but you gotta find some place that allows you to focus and study, because studying is an active process. It's not a passive process. It doesn't work if you're not in the mood and if you're not focused. So you need to find a way to get focused. And the best way to do that is to understand how you are as a person. Are you a person who likes to study for a long period of time? Are you the type of person who likes to study for a short period of time? Maybe you're that type of person. I like to take long breaks and I like to study for long periods of time. Okay, so I might study all day for a day, and then the next day I don't study at all. And then the day after that, I'll study all day again. See, that's how I am. Some people I know are very different. Figure out how you are, what works best for you, and follow that, okay? And as long as you do that, you won't have any problems acing this exam. If you were intelligent enough to make it out of pharmacy school, you're intelligent enough to do well on this exam. And don't let anybody tell you any different. So with that said, I wish you guys all the best. If you have any questions, if you want any more advice on how to go about studying for the exam, leave it in the comment section below. If you're new to this channel, I encourage you to subscribe. This is a science community that we're building where we actually don't hold back and we give each other the relevant information that we need to succeed. So it's definitely a good community for you guys to join. So I encourage you to subscribe and hit the notification bell so that you'll be notified whenever we release a video. So with that said, I'll see you guys next week. Happy studying. Bye-bye.